the guys like that become the big stars, and of recent vintage, John Jones, Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor, they seem to have that knack to do this, to talk and to generate publicity for themselves that put them over the top. That's the one thing that's difficult for a lot of guys. And are you good with that? Having to do that, having to get out there and kind of do all that talking that it takes to sell pay-per-views and get people to want to buy tickets to see you?
I think my fighting really just speaks for itself, and I feel like I really never get the credit I deserve, and it's I've never really cared to be famous, and it's part of the game and the direction that I'm going. I'm gonna blow up, and I feel like after this fight, people are gonna definitely I'm gonna go down in history, and this fight's not this fight's just gonna be just another little mark on the history books. I plan on taking this guy completely out and dismantling him. And, people are going to go back and talk about that for a long time. Other than that, I don't really worry about things that's out of my control. Like I went back and said, Conor may have made a lot of people laugh about the whole joking around like, who the fuck's that guy? But I was telling you the fucking truth. I'm telling these people the facts. It's just people don't really want to hear the truth because the truth hurts. Is that, this guy TKOs people. When I knock people out, they don't fucking move. And was I lying when I said that? I mean, how many people have been on the canvas not fucking moving, and they've had to go into extra commercial time because they're like, damn. And then they don't even play my highlights because it's too hot for TV. These are the things that I'm telling you that are facts. I'm not stating fiction. I don't have to go and lie and create somebody that I'm not, because that's not me. I stick with me, and I stick to these guns that you're seeing right here.
Yeah.
That's the fucking truth, man. And I give it to them raw. Like Trick Daddy, man. Just give them to it raw, man.
You are fighting Eddie Alvarez on July 30th in Calgary. It's a rematch, as I mentioned, of UFC 211, the former lightweight champ, who is ranked number 3, right above you in the lightweight rankings. And I think this is a big fight because not only is it two of the best in the world, Khabib, the lightweight champion, said potentially the winner of this fight could fight him. So it kind of worked out pretty good for you here.
Yeah, I really feel in my heart that I go out there and beat Eddie Alvarez, I'm going to get a title shot.
Let's talk about the finish of that fight. He landed 2 knees on you, one when your hand was on the ground, and the fight was in Texas, so it was under the old rules. The second one landed behind your ear. Your knee was clearly on the ground at that point. What was your take on it? Do you think it was just, the heat of the moment? Do you think it was intentional? Like, how would you describe the final seconds of what happened?
I thought it was in the heat of the moment. I thought he was a hurt fighter, fighting, trying to survive. And he's a fighter, at heart. He was hurt and he was doing whatever he could to cause damage to me. And, he was out of it a little bit, still hurt from the exchange we had right before that. I thought that for sure was the case. But I don't know, maybe he was just trying to damage me, and he was there. I don't know. The way he reacted to it, me telling the crowd to stop booing him was how I really felt in the moment. I felt like, this might have been an accident. This sucks. Here we are. Don't boo the guy. This guy comes to fight and puts it all on the line every time. I had a lot of respect for him as a person until I found out, who he was, and he started talking crap on the internet, saying I wanted out of the fight, and saying that, oh, you're finally off your stool now. Like, you can't talk shit after you do something illegal like that, and that kind of gives me a better insight of what kind of person he is, and I think he's a piece of shit. But also, I respect him as a fighter. He's a great fighter and a very dangerous fighter, but as a person, I've lost all respect for him. So that's where I'm at with that whole situation.
I mean, my personal experience with Dana, he's very bold. He's definitely a heavy hitter when it comes to having a conversation with him. He's not going to pull any punches. He's not going to hold back exactly what he thinks. But I think that most of the time that Dana is pretty spot on as far as where the sport is, where it's headed, matchups, fighters that are selling or doing well. I mean, he's told me things that I didn't want to hear, that I didn't like, and has pissed me off before for sure. But he has his opinion and he sticks to it. I don't know if like necessarily shitting on the fighters is exactly what Dana's doing. I think he's more just like being real, like how he really feels. Like I remember when Holly Holm got matched up over me to fight Ronda, and I was pissed, and I said, you know what, I'm just retiring. And he was like, yeah, well then just retire, if you're already talking about retiring. And it pissed me off because I was like I'm not retiring or threatening retiring because I don't feel like I can do this anymore. I'm retiring because this is fucked up and I don't agree with it, and this is my, and so I guess it's like his opinion versus my opinion, but I feel like his opinion carries more weight, so it's like it gets thrown around more. And like I guess that's how it probably comes across, as like shitting on the fighters. I don't think he's shitting on the fighters. I just think that when he says something, it's going to resound more, and it's not necessarily wrong or right, but it's just what Dana thinks and what he believes.
I don't know, and I've said this publicly, and I've said this in many a private conversation, I don't know how good Dana White still is for the sport, because we don't know what the UFC looks like without him. Fighters have this thing, and Brendan Schaub nailed it on the head. Like, weirdly, I had a much different relationship, obviously, with UFC executives than somebody like Misha did, but, like, Dana White acknowledging that I was alive was a high point in my career. You know how weird that is for me to say? Dana White called me when the UFC was done with me on Christmas. He called me and basically told me, thanks for giving us a good run. You didn't have the success you wanted, but you put on some exciting fights for us, and we really appreciate it. You did your funny weigh-in stuff, and it was good for our social media. He basically called me a personal phone call to say thank you. And I knew, like, oh, this means that my UFC career is over. But weirdly, and I can't explain to you why, because it didn't really do anything for me, it was, like, cool to be acknowledged by the boss. That's nuts to me. But Brendan Schaub, he said that. He said, look, it goes a long way if you just give a guy a pat on the back and say, good job.
Well, no, you had talked about this before. When people say that they have a tainted supplement, sort of the argument,
I don't buy it.
And the reason you had said you didn't buy it was because they can just technically go look at the supplement or find out, through whatever means that this is in there, and then they can go back and say, well, this is what I was using at the time. So does this change your perception on this at all? Or because look, USADA, I mean, they don't want, it is their job to catch people doing this shit, right? So I don't think that they want to turn these things over because it makes them look bad as well. It looks like they don't know what they're doing. So does this, when USADA actually says they fucked up, does that make you change your perception on it at all?
It's a good question, and it's a valid question. Got to remember, Anderson isn't the only person for this to happen with. I mean, Junior Dos Santos just fought last weekend in Boise. Well done to him. Made a triumphant return. And apparently, once again, USADA held up their hand and said, we got it wrong. And they cleared him. They cleared him of his suspension. Apparently, once again, it was a tainted supplement. I'm not sure of the details of that one off the top of my head. But he had a year out from the sport. His name was dragged through the mud. He's tarnished with that reputation of being a steroid user and a cheat. And then they just say, sorry about that. We didn't mean to. We got it wrong. We accept that. You're back. And in the meantime, as I say, you've been dragged through the mud. Your reputation tarnished. You've had a year away. Dos Santos isn't a spring chicken. He's not a young fighter. He's not an old fighter, but he's not a young fighter. He's got a year of his life away in his prime and lost a year's worth of earnings. So it's a very frustrating situation. And now here we are again in a very short turnaround with Anderson Silva saying the same thing. And of course, there's been all these fighters over the years that have said the same thing. Now I'm just playing devil's advocate. For me, I have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to steroids. But if lots of people are saying this and the facts are coming out that perhaps it is true, then, you have to hear them out and you have to let them have their fair say. Chad Mendes was one. He just recently came back. He said there was something in a cream that he put on. The problem is if fighters are using a lot of supplements, things might get into your body. I was always suspicious of anything they said because I never tested positive. But I didn't really use a lot of supplements either. I was never a guy taking all kinds of pills. Yeah. If anything, I'd do a bit of protein powder, and that would be it. Maybe some carbohydrate powder, maybe, a multivitamin in the morning, stuff like that. But I wasn't one of these big supplement guys.